come back to this. I'm a bit pessimistic about the candidacy at the moment. It's really quite stalled. I think there is a declining confidence in a way on both sides. The German Marshall Fund, my organization, does some polling called Transatlantic Trends, which some of you will be familiar with. And one of the things we've been asking about in recent years has to do with precisely this question of Turkey joining Europe. And so we asked in 12 European countries, and Turkey and in the United States, where it's less of an interesting result, do you think it's a good idea that Turkey becomes a member of the European Union, one? And two, do you think it's likely? And the results are very interesting over time. First of all, when you ask Europeans about this, do you think it's a good idea if Turkey joins Europe? The majority say no, 60%. Do you think, let me put it another way. For about 60% say no. Do you think it's likely that Turkey will join the European Union? The majority say yes. So they don't like the idea, but they think it's inevitable. In Turkey, you get precisely the opposite result. People still, by and large, favor Turkey joining Europe. But if you ask whether they're confident that'll happen, they say no. So, you know, this, to me, conveys a great deal of cynicism on both sides about this process, and I don't take very much encouragement from that. From the point of view of American interests, I think at the end of the day, it's less about whether Turkey joins the European Union as a full member, and much more about whether Turkey continues to converge sector by sector with Europe over the coming decades. Now, you know, I would bet that that would happen, but it might well end in something that I know Turks don't like to use this terminology of privileged partnership, but it may well end in something like that, and Turkey may be more comfortable with that. I don't know. There is a NATO piece to this as well, which is even less trendy than talking about Turkey in the West in general, so I won't say too much about this, except to say that I do think that Turkish confidence in NATO, even as a security provider, not even to say an identity club, has declined quite markedly in recent years. And there's a bigger debate that goes on about NATO in general, but in Turkey there is a very specific concern that NATO simply hasn't been there for them when it's counted in the past. And there's a lack of confidence in the guarantee. A final third point about the US and Turkey. There is, I think, very much a sense in which the relationship between Turkey and the United States has been on autopilot for decades, and it obviously can't continue that way. It obviously has a slightly different feel to it than it did in the past, and it needs to be recalibrated. Part of it is the structural problem that has been referred to already, which is that the relationship has been very much dominated by security issues, and we define it very geopolitically. This is in quite some contrast to the relationship between Turkey and other neighbors within Europe and Eurasia and so on. Some of this is inevitable, but it does leave big chunks of the relationship largely underdeveloped. So the constituency for the relationship with Turkey and the United States is not big. It makes it very fragile with respect to crises that do emerge in the relationship, and I think that's very important to remember. A bit of this is about public diplomacy. Clearly, you know, there has been this Obama bounce throughout Europe, but in Turkey is not one of the places where that's been particularly pronounced. There has been some. Clearly, there's an improved vision about the United States, but it's still not fixed by any means, and it may never be fixed. I mean, I think we mislead ourselves if we have in mind an image of U.S.-Turkish relations that have, you know, in general worked like clockwork, and suddenly we had a problem for 8 years. Under Bush. It's not quite like that. There wasn't this golden age. There were periods even in the 1970s when Turkey was under sanctions from the United States. So this is a difficult relationship. This is a really tough relationship for both sides to manage, and I don't frankly see that changing. Let me just end by just mentioning, just very briefly, some things that I see as being quite problematic on the horizon. They may be dealt with successfully, but they might not be. I mean, one, of course, is the perennial issue of Armenia and the failure, in particular this year, to consolidate this very promising rapprochement between Turkey and Armenia, which I think from a Washington point of view is seen very, very negatively. Very negatively.
You still have a couple of minutes, Ian. Would you want to comment a little more?
Yeah, I am. Let me just mention two more things. One, the other is, so that Turkey-Armenia and the failure to consolidate that is one. The second one is on views about the Middle East peace process, and in particular, if you get another sort of Gaza crisis,